All right, so let's go ahead and plan and structure our projects using phases. And then once we have all of our phases set, we can go ahead and start adding features. So I'll start at the project kickoff dashboard right here. I'm going to scroll down to panel number 5, schedule phases and features, and I'll click on create a phase. Now this is where we can name the phase, give it an optional description, but most importantly, define its phase type. Now, we've got a number of different phase types within Centercode, and they help define where we're at in terms of the project. Now, those 3 phase types are going to be onboarding, engagement, and closure. So onboarding is all about preparing testers for the project. It's where we're doing things like recruiting them, vetting them via our qualification surveys, adding those qualified testers to the project as participants. We're sending out test units, we're educating them about what's required in the project itself. So it's all about bringing them in and getting the stage set for testing, which we do in our engagement phases. Now, engagement focuses on completing activities and testing features. So we can split these up into multiple different weeks of engagement phases. You can see on the screen we've got basic usage, advanced usage, outdoor usage, etc. And we can populate those engagement phases with specific features. So for example, basic usage would be week 1 of testing. So maybe we want our testers to focus on things like unboxing, setting up the test unit, getting accounts added and created, etc. And then when we move on to advanced usage, we're kind of diving a little deeper into the product's feature set. So that's what engagement is about. It's going to be the bulk of your test, and it's where we do all of our testing. Now, closure focuses on wrapping up the test or wrapping up a specific kind of leg of the test. So this is where we are, thanking testers for their participation. We're triaging those last pieces of feedback. We're getting our results to our stakeholders. It's all about closing things out. Now you may notice that we have a pause phase here in our list of phases. Now, pause phases aren't necessarily a phase type that you can configure, but instead they exist when there is no phase planned between 2 phases. So let's say advanced usage ends on the 17th and outdoor usage is going to begin on the 29th, we would have a pause phase automatically added in between those 2 phases. Testers are not prohibited from testing during a pause phase. It just means that we don't have a set of features for them to test at that moment. We're not onboarding, and we're also not closing out the test. So it really is kind of like, hey, we don't have any focus right now, but please go ahead and keep testing and keep submitting your feedback. Phase types also govern how Ted, our virtual teammate, operates within Centercode and within your project. So he's going to have focused messaging based on the phase type. So he's going to be educating testers during onboarding. He's going to be engaging them during our engagement phase. He's going to be sending them after action reports during closure. So his messaging is always tailored to whatever phase type we're in. And we'll talk about Ted in more detail a little bit later on in the course. Now that we understand phase types, let's head back into the project and learn more about how to schedule a test. All right, so I'm back here at the test planning page, and I went ahead and created 4 phases for my project. I've got my onboarding phase, my 2 engagement phases, and then to wrap everything up, a closure phase. Let's click into one of these phases so we can check out how it was built out. So let's start with basic usage. I've got my title there, I have my optional description, and then I have my phase type set as engagement. I also have a little info box at the bottom, so if you ever forget what a phase type does, just select it from the drop-down menu, and we've got that box there for you. Now below that, you can see a small checkbox, include regression features in this phase. And we'll talk a little bit more about regression features in the next part of this video, but including regression features does allow us to do some retesting throughout the project. So very neat feature to have when we're testing. Next up is scheduling the phase. So this is scheduled to start after Solaris onboarding ends on the 27th. So this phase is going to start on the 28th. And then it's going to end before advanced usage begins on the 2nd. So this phase is going to end August 1st. So keep that in mind when planning out your phases. Team access, this is an engagement phase. So we do want to make sure that our participants have access to this phase. And we can also toggle access individually for each team. So if we wanted to exclude a team from a phase or a feature for whatever reason, we can do that. But making sure all of our participant teams have access is just fine. We'll go ahead and click submit right there. And it's a similar story for things like our onboarding phase. So here we have the name, no description. It's set to start on a specific date, so the 20th, and then this ends on the 26th. And if we go down to team access, you can see that participants also have access to this. It's always good as a rule of thumb to make sure that participants have access to a phase and its features. If you're ever getting reports from your testers like, hey, I don't see any features right now, and you definitely know that there are phases and features for where you're at in the project, double check your team access. Just make sure that everything is good right there. And of course, we have closure right there at the bottom. Now that we understand phases a little bit better, we'll move into the next part where we talk about the different feature types we have, and we'll start adding some features to our phases. All right, so let's go ahead and start adding some features to our project. Now we've got two different ways that we can do this. I can either go to the top right of the test planning page and click on add a feature right here, or I can hover over an engagement phase and click on the plus button. Now, if I scroll down, you'll also see that we have some other feature types that are available to us: regression, new user, and phaseless. And it's a similar process here. If I hover over this, plus button appears up and it says new feature. I'm going to click on add a feature right here. And before we actually start creating a feature, let's start talking about the different feature types that we have within Centercode. So first off is going to be your standard feature, or what I like to call your phased feature. And these are assigned to engagement phases. These are going to make up the bulk of features within your project. During a phase, these are going to be presented to testers on the project home. And Ted will also communicate with them saying, hey, we just started a new phase. Here's what we're focusing on right now. Or if we're in the middle of a phase, Ted may say to a tester, hey, great job completing those activities. Here's some other features that I'd like you to focus on, etc. So these are your primary features here, and they're going to be sort of the bulk of features within the project. Now we also have phaseless features. Now phaseless features are optional, and they're not assigned to a specific phase. This is really great for like a miscellaneous feature type, where testers are still submitting feedback, but maybe that feedback doesn't pertain to any of the features that we have planned out within our project or within our test plan. New user features must be completed before participants can access the current phase and its features. This is really great for the first week of a test where everyone is in and testing. You can have a set amount of features that everyone has to complete before they can move further. So that can be things like account setup and logging in for the first time and setting up the unit, etc. New user features are also great for testers who are joining in the middle of a project. So let's say, for example, we're in week 3, 5 testers had to drop out for whatever reason. Maybe they were unable to test or they were inactive, etc. Those new 5 testers that we bring in before they can access any of our current phases or features must complete those new user features. So this is great for features that you absolutely need tested or features that are prerequisites for the rest of the usage of the product. And finally, we have our regression features. And regression features can be periodically retested throughout the project. So let's say you have something like battery life. You want to see how the battery life is going to perform throughout the project. You can assign that as a regression feature. You can test it in your first week of testing. So let's say it's basic usage. And then once you get to week 4, it's the 4th week of testing, you can retest battery life again and get 2 unique sets of data. So you can see what it's going to look like in week 1 and what it looks like in week 4. And we actually have some features within Centercode that allow you to cross-check that data and roll it all up together to see exactly how the feature is performing. So regression features, excellent for retesting, and a really, really awesome feature within Centercode. Now that we understand the feature types better, let's hop back into the platform so we can see some of the features that I've built out. All right, so I've built out some features inside of our project here. You can see that basic usage and advanced usage each have 2 standard features each. Basic usage has a regression feature added to it, so that's what we did earlier when we set up the phase. And if I scroll down, you can see that That battery life regression feature is right there. We have 2 new user features set up as well. And then I have one phaseless feature, which is just other. So let's go ahead and check out a couple of these features just to see how they're built out. So we'll start with sync cameras. So you can see it's assigned to basic usage. We have our feature name and our feature description right there. Very basic, just giving testers an idea of the activity they're going to be completing. Our feature value is set as high. So this is a high priority feature for us. And it's going to naturally collect more impact score as users submit feedback on it. And we'll talk more about impact score a little later on in the course. And then we also have an activity here. Activities are optional, and they're designed to sort of guide users through the process of testing this feature. So for example, we have a list of different steps that they should go through here, removing the cameras from the box, waiting for the indicator light to blink, etc. Giving them some tips as well as to what to do if the camera is not charged out of the box. But you can see that we're never telling them to submit a certain kind of feedback. So we don't say, hey, test it out and then submit an idea, or test it out and then submit an issue. Really want that natural, honest, genuine feedback from our testers when they're completing these activities. So we never really guide them one way or the other. We just simply guide them towards how to successfully complete the activity. Effort activity here is high, so the feature effort is high. There's a lot of steps required for completing this. You can change this as well. We have everything from very high to very low in terms of effort. And it's the same with feature value. You can have a very, very high value feature, and then very low, and even a none, where there's no impact score associated with anything submitted to this feature. And that's great for things like support tickets. So if you have like a support ticket feedback type, you can have it so all your support tickets don't actually collect any impact score. They're just there to get help from the admin team. Use FSAT star rating. We definitely recommend having this on for your features. When a tester goes to complete an activity, they'll be asked to rate it on a scale from 1 to 5. And then we're going to direct them towards specific feedback types based on their rating. So let's say they complete sync cameras and they rate it 1 stars. We'll definitely say, hey, it looks like you had an issue with that feature. Do you want to submit an issue? If they're submitting something like 3 or 4 stars, we may say, hey, how do you think we can make this better? Go ahead and submit an idea. And then if it's at 5 stars, we'll say, yeah, it looks like you are really enjoying this feature. Why not submit some praise and let us know what we did right? So FSAT star rating, we definitely recommend having this on, but make this activity optional is, of course, optional. You can attach files as well. So if you want to attach a guide, maybe a PDF or a video explaining how to properly test this feature, you can do that as well. You can add some internal notes for yourself. And then team access, we mentioned this earlier, make sure that the right teams have access to this feature before submitting it. We'll also go ahead and take a look at our regression feature right down here at the bottom. So it looks very, very similar. The only difference here is that it's assigned to that regression phase. So we have our feature name, our description, the feature value, a very short basic activity for users to complete, and everything else about it is really the same. And to testers, this looks the same when they're testing it. They don't necessarily know that it's a regression feature. Maybe in week 4, when we retest it again, they may say, hey, that feature kind of popped up again during testing. But to them, it's a standard activity. They go ahead and complete it like anything else, and it doesn't introduce any sort of bias to their feedback, which is great.